Hello and welcome to NJ Biz Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Kanaj. My guest today is Gary Dahms. He is the president, CEO, and chairman of T&M Associates. It's a civil engineering firm based in Middletown. Gary, welcome.
Thank you
Welcome
much.
back, actually.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Glad to be back.
A previous guest. I'm glad to have you back. I wanted to start with something actually that's new since the last time we spoke, and that is that you are now chairman of the State Chamber of Commerce. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
What does that mean to you to take on that role, and how do you feel about it?
Well, I'm honored, first of all, honored to take on the role. I've been on the board there for quite a while now, and have strong feelings about the strength of the chamber and what the chamber does for the business community, as a lobbyist, as an advocate, and a lot of times I get a lot of information, questions on legislation, proposed legislation that may affect our business. Mike Eganton at the chamber is a wealth of knowledge on explaining what's good or bad, or how it can help or how it can hurt our business and all businesses, and then guides me in talking to our legislators.
Okay, well, a pitch for joining for our viewers who haven't already. So okay, given that, then what are the priorities? What do you hope to accomplish as during your term? What are you thinking about? What are you going to work on?
Well, first of all, we've got a phenomenal staff there, and like all organizations, the job at the top of the organization is made very easy when you have qualified, capable, and competent staff. And I have to say that from Tom Bracken all the way down, it's an incredible staff. We are focused on, business advocacy, obviously, the IIJA funds and how they are affecting the industry as a whole, the state as a whole in the economy, and particularly my industry, in the construction industry.
Right, certainly.
As you may know, the Transportation Trust Fund tax, the gas tax, is sunsetting, I believe, the end of this year or next year. So we are already starting the advocacy on that, because that's been critical for, again, repairing, replacing the infrastructure in the state, and it's paid for by the users, which I think is very important.
And a big issue for Tom and the chamber as a whole, generally.
Correct. Yep. We were very involved with the initial passing of that legislation back when it came out in 2016, I think. Mm-hmm. AI is playing a bigger role. Technology, those are always at the top of our mind at the chamber, and how they're going to affect business again. And one of the things, interestingly enough, we just listened to a U.S. economist talking about, and I didn't realize it was as broad as this, but the lack of the diminishing workforce, if you will. The Gen X, the baby boomers are all now starting to retire. They were the biggest class of working people, and they're being replaced by much smaller numbers of people. So there's an overall diminishing in the workforce. So then that ties to AI, and from a business perspective, the chamber's focus on how do we deal with this? What can we do? And one of the things, piggybacking into another thing I know we're going to be talking about, the summit in New Jersey, making New Jersey a good place to live and work is important to getting those bodies in the state and keeping them here. So that's top of mind again under my next 2 years or a year and a half.
All good stuff. And you mentioned the Renew Jersey Summit that's coming up, I think, next month, right? In March?
Correct. In March.
I know it's a big event. I plan to be there. I'm sure lots of our viewers are planning to be there. What can we expect? Why is it important? What do you think that's going to accomplish?
Well, it's important. It's interesting. It was born out of post-COVID, when we were planning on returning to the Washington trip, the ride to walk to Washington. There were the hotel that we had typically gone to was sold, being demolished and replaced with condos, so we couldn't do the trip that year. So this was not really a replacement, but an alternative for the walk to Washington. And it was such a big hit the first year. We're now here in the third year, and we expect more than 1,000 attendees.
Okay.
I think there's 15 different panels, and the focus is what I just talked about. New Jersey has the rankings for New Jersey have jumped up to, I think we're number 19 now in top states for business, where we were at 42nd in a year. So we've made great progress, and I think the chamber had a role in that, in again pushing advocacy, making business, the state, more business friendly. But so now that we're at 19, how do we at least maintain that or make it even better. And that's
Okay.
going to be the focus of the summit this year is now that we got here, how do we get here? What are we going to do to keep it? And what are we going to do to make it better? So there's going to be a lot of different panels about that. AI is another one of the panels. So it should be a very intense full day on Tuesday and then half a day on Wednesday.
Right. Okay. Very good. Sounds good. Now you mentioned the walk to Washington. There's plans for bringing that back. Can you tell us anything more about what's going on with that?
Yes, that is planned to come back in 2025 next year. Basically the same time of year, the same general format. However, we are talking about maybe modifying the dinner on that night down there. People get a lot of, one of the things we keep hearing is how much networking goes on the train, which is the whole purpose. And then when we're there, there's some receptions and whatnot.
Certainly.
And the dinner sort of broke that up.
Mm-hmm.
Dinner would be a couple hours and it was not really networking. It was a lot of speeches and whatnot. So we're going to maybe change up that format and provide more networking opportunities while people are down in Washington.
Okay, interesting. Well, that sounds interesting. But the same basic idea. Everybody gets on an Amtrak train, starting in Newark, going all the way to Washington, and
exactly right.
Squeeze your way through.
Yes, yes.
All right. Well, that sounds good. We'll be looking forward to that. Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about what's going on around the state in your business. The last time we spoke, we talked a lot about the influx of federal infrastructure spending. You mentioned the Infrastructure Act earlier. There's been and basically since the first Renew Jersey Summit, where we first talked about this, there have been concerns about whether that money was being spent properly. What's your assessment now, as we speak in February 2024, about how those funds are being deployed? Are they getting to where they need to go, and are we getting the bang for the buck that we were hoping to get?
Yes and yes. I'm happy to say yes and yes.
Okay.
The last report I saw from the DOT, that nearly $10 billion of the $12 billion that is allocated, $2 billion a year for 6 years, and here we are in the third year of it. But nearly $10 billion has been allocated to different projects. Of that, about $8 billion of that is for transportation projects. Mm-hmm. Now they may not be all out, the funds being out and being spent yet, but at least they're being identified and where they're going to be used in the projects and what projects are going to be used for. Probably the biggest project and most well-known project that's being partially funded by this is the Gateway Tunnel, Hudson Gateway Tunnel project.
Exactly.
Which is a huge project for not just New Jersey, but for the entire region.
And the entire country, really.
And actually the entire country. You're absolutely right. So that's good. And a couple of little facts here. There's almost 450 bridges in New Jersey and over 3,400 miles of road that are all in poor condition. The state goes out and rates these structures, and they're either under capacity or structurally deficient and in need of repair and or replacement. So that money is going where it should go, to the infrastructure. In addition, there's about $500 million going to clean water and water and sewer infrastructure. Again, sorely needed. About $400 million to internet, broadband internet, which is again becoming more and more important to business, not just for entertainment and whatnot. And about $120 million for clean energy and make our power grid more resilient. So the money is out there. The money is getting out there. The DOT actually provides a report I believe it's every year on where the money's going and where it's being spent. So, and again, a reminder, it's $2 billion for 6 years, but each of those years, the state has basically 8 years to use the money. It's got 3 years to allocate and then another 5 years to spend it. So this program is going to go 6 years plus another 6 years after that, or 8 years after that. So this is going to go, for another decade. We'll see the impacts of this. Okay. And again, another reminder, this is in addition to all the money that was previously available, like we talked about, the TTF funds, the other capital funds. So I think that's, and it's also recession resilient. I don't want to say proof, but it certainly is available there during any downturns in the economy. So it's a very important and a very critical part of our state economy.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned a couple of things there that I want to get into, but first, I just want to get kind of a sense for where we are. The money's been allocated. It's been deployed. Is the work actually happening? I mean, are you doing work with regard to some of this stuff? Your firm and folks that you work with. Are there shovels in the ground right now? I mean, that's
Yes.
what everybody really wants to know.
There are shovels in the ground. In fact, many of the first projects, some of the projects in that first year were shovel-ready projects.
Okay.
Projects that were designed, had permits, and were ready to go out on the street and be constructed. We, in the design community, are also seeing a significant uptick in all those infrastructure projects, whether it's roads and bridges, water, sewer. We have definitely seen and continue to see an uptick in that. In fact, I would say the biggest challenge, and I said this, I think when we first talked about this, is finding people, finding engineers to do the work.
Okay.
Well,
it's back to the workforce issue, I guess. Then.
Exactly right. It's back to workforce. And then, one of the things we talk about, is there a way to utilize AI in a way to not replace people, but complement and maybe shore up some of that workforce shortage. But yeah, the work is definitely getting out on the street in terms of either construction and or in my world, design.
Okay. All right. I asked that because my colleagues and I recently met with the leadership, 3 commissioners, including the chair and the vice chair of the Gateway Development Commission, and they insisted that the work on the Hudson Rail Tunnel and the Portal Bridge and all the other the transportation infrastructure in that region, they're saying is essentially unstoppable at this point. Yeah. That there are stakes in the ground. That once they get the full funding agreement, there was a story in Politico this morning about the fact that the Biden administration seems to be moving in that direction of getting the full funding agreement. Once that happens, nothing can stop this. Is that kind of optimism warranted as far as you're concerned?
Yes. And okay. I'll say nothing can stop it except the lack of workforce or the shortage of workforce. I mean, that
comes back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, which is a good thing. I mean, rather have that than the opposite, the alternative.
Okay. We were asking that, we were talking about that because of, and this gets back again to some of the issues that we were talking about. I mean, let's face it, there are a lot of elections coming up: presidential election, congressional election in New Jersey, a gubernatorial election for an open seat. And, there have been administrations who were not terribly enthusiastic, let's say, about some of these infrastructure projects. But what I hear you saying, what I heard the folks at Gateway saying, what I hear you saying now is essentially that these things will continue no matter what. Is that a fair assessment of where we are in terms of getting this money?
Fair and accurate, yes. Okay. Fair and accurate assessment, for sure.
Okay. A lot of folks are going to be happy to hear that, so I'm glad to hear that. You also mentioned broadband expansion. I know the BPU last fall, I guess it was, sort of started to get that ball rolling. I'm wondering if you think that those sorts of projects, that kind of work might be up. And I guess it's going to come back to workforce again about whether they can get up and working as quickly as some of these other things have. You're not tunneling through a dense urban environment under a river, but there's probably, I'm sure, a lot of complex infrastructure work there. How do you assess where we are in terms of that? Because that's critical to the economy too. If we're going to be using AI and all these other things, exactly. that kind of infrastructure is going to be essential.
So I'm not in that world per se, but again, talking with my colleagues at the chamber, similar type issues, workforce. There's permitting issues with that because they're going over, easements and whatnot. Right. A lot of times they are using existing easements or existing overhead lines, so there's piggybacking on that. But I think in general, they are like the rest of us. We are ready to do it. We're gearing up for it, doing it now, and again, looking to workforce to make sure the workforce is there to get it done.
Okay. And is there anything else going on that we should know about that's maybe under the radar that we're not sort of seeing every day, the kind of thing that folks in your business know about that maybe the rest of us don't? That's just in terms of progress being made or challenges being overcome. I mean, it sounds like everything seems to be moving along and it should be, much of it should be public, but I wonder if there's anything going on behind the scenes that we need to know about.
Nothing that comes to mind right now. Again, I think with all the stuff that's visible and out there and transparent is taken up a good most of my day,
Okay.
every day, and trying to figure out, how do we get this done? There is the industry is in very good shape. I went to a conference at the end of last year of I think it was about 300 engineering architect firms at a national conference, and companies from across the world, companies from $10 million in annual revenue to $12 billion in annual revenue. So there's a whole, but the whole outlook from that conference was a very positive outlook for the next several years in our industry. So all very good.
Okay. Well, that was actually the last thing I was going to ask you about was sort of the outlook. First of all, for the industry, there've been a lot of talk about some of the challenges that folks have been facing, inflation, interest rates, that kind of thing. Is that sort of clearing up at this point, to the point where there's better visibility into what you're going to be able to do in the say next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I would say particularly in our industry, again, because of the funding that's out there with the IIJF money, the term that was coined at this last is that our industry is recession resilient, not recession proof, right? So recession resilient. So we don't feel the effects of if there were to be a recession. In fact, just the talk out there was we're past that. There's not so much talk about a recession anymore. In fact, the economy and jobs that you see at the jobs market is the best it's been in a while. And now we're talking about lowering the interest rates, the Feds, for the next couple, and that's only going to drive the economy even more. So I think, the outlook, the short term and even the midterm outlook is very positive from what I've been hearing and from what I'm seeing.
Okay. And how about your own business? How's T&M doing? What's business like these days?
So T&M is doing very, very well. We just closed our books on 2023, and it was, I think, the 5th year in a row where we have continued to have double-digit growth and double-digit profitability, which in our industry is very, very good. And our outlook for 24 is similar, if not better. So we are doing well and keep coming back to the same thing. The biggest challenge is hiring people. In order, if we're going to grow 10%, the way we generate revenue is by having people to build. So that means we need to hire 10% more people.
Okay.
In our case, that's about 50 people.
Wow. Okay. All right. Is that the big? I mean, you keep coming back to it, so I'm guessing that's the biggest challenge. Is that the thing that keeps you awake at night? Absolutely.
Okay. So, people, 2 parts to that: keeping the ones you have, because if you lose people, and in an environment like this, there is a lot of competition between engineering firms to hire other engineers. So keeping people, making sure you have a best place to work, which we're very proud of having that designation by NJBiz. So that helps keep people, attract and keep people, and then continually look at ways to keep people by providing career opportunity, provide exciting jobs. So all that is that's what keeps me up at night, is making sure we're doing that.
All right. Well, I'm sure you're not alone in that.
No,
especially for but your business. I mean, you need highly skilled people, highly educated, highly skilled people. It's a little bit different for you, I think, than even some others.
Correct. Yeah, they're all typically all college graduates at engineering schools. So environmental, highly educated. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we will leave it there. Gary Dahms, President CEO of T&M Associates. I hope we see each other in Atlantic City at the Renew Jersey Summit. That'll be interesting.
We'll definitely see you there.
Okay. And I hope you'll come back and give us an update on how you're doing with hiring and retaining some of those engineers who are going to build the future.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you, Gary. Yep. And thank you all for watching. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.
Bye-bye.